I am making a Nordic God deck profile. I've been playing around with this deck for a little bit ever since the new support from Battles of Chaos, or that's what it was. But I really like this version of the deck, this version being a go first control deck. There are a few things I would like to change because of cards I don't have, but I'll go over that when I go through the deck profile. But I've also actually liked playing Nordic ever since the Legendary Hero decks was released, because Golveg just made this deck so much more playable. Anyway, starting with the monsters, I play one copy of Verg of the Nordic Alfar. I'm honestly thinking about trying to bump this up to 2 or 3 just because of its last effect. But its first effect is if it's summoned, right? No, after you normal summon it, its effect lets you immediately after that effect is also normal summon another monster. You can only gain that effect once. And then if it leaves the field, then you can take one Nordic relic in your graveyard and add it to your hand. So the reason I like it is because you can just use it to keep recycling some of the Nordic relics in this deck that are one-ofs. And it's level 1, so you can also play things like Relinquished Anima or Link Spider. Then I play one copy of Valkyrie of the Nordic Ascendant. I like this card as a one-of just because of how, as long as you have the right setup, it's a one-card God card. Because when it's summoned and it's the only card you control, you can banish 2 Nordic monsters from your grave to then summon 2 level 4, I want to say it's Nordic Ascendant tokens, which you can then use to make one of the boss monsters of the deck. Because it is a Nordic Ascendant, you have to summon Odin with that effect. Then I play the one copy of Mara of the Nordic Alfar. Mara lets you Synchros summon using Nordic monsters in your, or 2 Nordic monsters in your hand. So if you have it and 2 level 4s, you can make a God card. Or if you have it, a level 3 and a level 4, you can make a level 9. Which, honestly, I do need to play Trishul in this deck, since you can actually make it quite easily, in fact. Then I move on to play 3 copies of Nordic Beast Golem Bursty. Nordic Beast Golem Bursty has the effect that it can be used as any of the requirements for a Synchro Summon of a Nordic God card, so it can count as a Nordic Ascendant, a Nordic Beast, or a Nordic Alfar. But it also has the effect of if it's normal or special summoned, you can summon another Nordic monster from your hand, and then once per turn you can target 1 Nordic monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. Then I play 2 copies of Tangrisnir of the Nordic Beasts. I just play this in here because it's the level 3. But it has the effect if it goes from, switched from defense to attack, you can then special summon. I actually read its effects, so I have to actually read it. When a monster you control destroy a battle and send to the graveyard and summon from your hand, and then once per turn, when the defense position, or when it goes from defense to attack, you can special summon 1 Nordic Beast monster from your deck in defense position other than another Tangrisnir, or Tangrisjoster. But like I said, I hardly ever use those effects. They usually get summoned off of Golveg and then immediately used for a Nordic God. Then I play 2 copies of Tangrisnir. Tangrisnir has the effect if it is destroyed by battling, summon 2 level 3 Nordic Beast tokens. And that's about it. Then I play 3 copies of Nordic Smith Evaldi. Evaldi can summon itself from your hand as long as you control a Nordic or Aesir monster. And once per turn when it's summoned, you can search your deck for a Nordic relic. So, and you can only use each effect of Evaldi once per turn. So what I would do is, if I have Golem Bursty and Evaldi, or if I have one of the goats and Evaldi, then I can summon the goat, summon Evaldi, search for the throne, and then the throne can summon Golem Bursty from the deck. Or if it's another level 4, then you can summon Mara or not Mara, summon Valkyrie and summon Odin. But I just find ability actually be very useful. Then I play 3 copies of Alvis of the Nordic Alfar. Alvis has the effect of, this is the only card that is banished by a card effect, then you can summon, or then you can take 1 Nordic monster you control and 2 Nordic monsters from your deck, send them to the graveyard, and then summon an A-tier monster from your extra deck, ignoring its summoning condition. And it has another effect that I know lets you summon another Nordic god, but I don't remember how it works. Okay. And then its other effect is while it's in the graveyard, if an A-tier monster is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can then banish it to summon another A-tier monster from your extra deck, ignoring its summoning conditions, as long as it had a different name. So if your opponent kills Thor, you can summon Loki or Odin. Then to finish off the monsters, I play 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, just because it is nice to have hand traps. Especially one that stops your opponent from searching from the deck, sending cards from the deck to grave, or summoning a monster from the deck. Moving on to the spells, I play 1 copy of Power Desire, since most of your important cards you play more than 1 of. 1 copy of Reinforcement of the Army to search for Evaldi or Verg, whichever you think is more important. Then I play 2 copies of Nordic Relic, oh boy, Listjolf. I just call it Throne because it's easier. But if Konami would have switched the 2 effects of this card, I feel like it would have been much better. But you can activate it so that you can summon a Nordic monster from your deck, but as long as you control that monster, you can't special summon from the extra deck except A-tier monsters. And then you can banish it from your graveyard other than the turn it was sent to the graveyard, to then search your deck for any Nordic monster. I feel like if it was the other way around, it would have been so much better. And a definite 3 of. Then, because hand traps are a thing, I play 2 copies of Triple Tactics Talent. This can either let you draw 2, or if your opponent activates a monster effect during your turn, then you can use this card to activate 1 of 3 effects. Draw 2 cards, take control of an opponent's monster, or look at your opponent's hand and shuffle 1 card from their hand back into the deck. Then, moving on to the traps, I play 1 copy of Nordic Relic Gungnir, or Gungnir. Gungnir lets you banish 1 of your Nordic or A-tier monsters to then destroy 1 card your opponent controls. And then during your second standby phase, after its activation, that monster returns to your field in face-up attack position. And this is the card I would usually recycle with Verg's effect. Then I play 2 copies of Nordic Relic Svalin. Svalin's effect is, if you control an A-tier monster, you can negate the effects of all face-up cards your opponent controls, or currently controls till the end of the turn. And then its other effect is, you contribute a Nordic monster to special summon an A-tier monster from your graveyard as long as it was properly summoned first. And you can only use 1 of its 2 effects per turn, and only once that turn. So if you use the negate effect, you can't use the revive effect. And if you use the revive effect, you can't use the negate effect. Then, because this is a Go First version, I play 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence, 3 copies of Solemn Strike, just pay 1,500 life points, negate an opponent's the summoning of an opponent's monster or the activated effect of an opponent's monster. 3 copies of Solemn Warning. When your opponent would summon a monster, or a spell or trap card, or monster effect is activated that includes the effect to summon a monster, pay 2,000 life points to negate the activation or summon and destroy it. And then, last but not least, 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. Pay half your life points to negate the activation of a spell, trap, or the summoning of a monster. And that is it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck. Oh yeah, I realized I skipped over it, but a card I would want to play is Hippo Carnival in this deck. Just because when you summon 1 of your 3 copies of Golveg of the Nordic Descendants, you can activate its effect when link summoned to banish up to 3 cards you control to then summon 3 Nordic monsters from your deck. But then you can't summon from the extra deck except for Aesir monsters. But the reason I want it is because you summon Golveg, you then activate its effect, Chain Hippo Carnival, which gives you 3 Hippo tokens. You can then banish those 3 tokens, since Golveg does not banish face down, and that just turns your 1 Hippo Carnival into a Nordic god, instead of having to get rid of 3 cards to then summon a Nordic god. But Golveg can banish cards from your hand or field, except for itself. And then if a Golveg points to an Aesir monster, you can then make it so that Golveg cannot be targeted for attacks, but that Aesir monster cannot be targeted by card effects. Then for the Synchros, I play 1 copy of Clearwing Synchro Dragon. I don't think I'll ever play this card in a Synchro deck, or I'll ever not play this card in a Synchro deck, is what I meant to say. Its effect, if your opponent activates the effect of a monster that's level 5 or higher, you can negate that effect and destroy it. And if your opponent activates the effect of a monster that would target a level 5 or higher monster, you can negate that effect and destroy it. And then if either its effects destroy a monster if a monster is destroyed by its effect, it then gains that monster's attack. Which is why I really like it. Then I play 1 copy of Cyber's Quantum Dragon. While you control a Link monster, your opponent cannot target other cards with card effects except for itself, nor can they attack other monsters except for itself. And then if it battles a monster, at the start of the damage step, or damage calculation, it can return the opposing monster to the hand, and if it's your turn, it can declare a second attack. Then I play 2 copies of Light and Dragon. This is supposed to be a 1-of, so the second one should be a Trishula Dragon of the Ice Barrier. And I've actually thought about replacing the second Light and Dragon with Trishula Sub-Zero Dragon of the Ice Barrier. And before anyone says anything, I am well aware it's actually Zero Dragon. I just think Sub-Zero is better, therefore I call it Sub-Zero Dragon. Anyway, Light and Dragon's effect is, at attack declaration, if this card battles another monster, you can have this card lose 500 attack and defense permanently, and the opposing monster loses 1500 attack and defense till the end phase. So I just like it just because it can actually try to beat over things that are much bigger than it, but because of its effect, I'm still in here from the last time I played Nordic, and I just couldn't think of 2 other things, but like I said, they should be the 2 Trishula Synchros. So, there's that. Then I play the 1 copy of Cyframe Lord Omega, just because if you banish monsters, then Omega can put your monsters back into your grave, and also can help with keeping the hand advantage with your opponent. And then if it's in the graveyard, you can shuffle it and 1 other card in your graveyard back into the deck. Then I play 1 copy of Ascension Sky Dragon. This card should be a Baron to floor, but I do not have a Baron, so Ascension Sky Dragon will do. The Ascension Sky Dragon has the effect of when Synchro summoned, it gains 800 attack for each card in your hand, so if you summon it while having 5 cards in your hand, it'll be 4000 attack. And then, when this card you control is destroyed by an opponent's card and sent to the graveyard, if all the monsters that were used for its Synchro summoning are in the graveyard for its Synchro summon, then you can special summon them. But their effects are negated, and you can only use that effect of Ascension Sky Dragon once per turn. I honestly have never made Ascension Sky Dragon, but like I said, it should be a Baron. So 3 cards in the extra deck should be Trishula, Trishula's Sub-Zero, and Baron. And now the fun part of the extra deck. I play 1 copy of Loki, Lord of the Aesir. Loki has the effect of, during your battle phase, if your opponent activates a spell or trap card, then you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. And then, during the end phase, if Loki is in the graveyard because it was destroyed or sent there that turn, you can then banish a Nordic Alfor monster, special on it back from your graveyard. And if you do, you can take 1 trap in your graveyard and add it back to your hand. Then I play 3 copies of Thor, Lord of the Aesir, just because Thor, in my opinion, is actually the best of the Nordic god cards. Once per turn, Thor can negate the effects of all your opponent's monsters they currently control. If Thor is sent to the graveyard, then during the end phase, Thor can then banish a Nordic beast from your graveyard or Nordic beast tuner, to then summon itself back and burn your opponent for 800. Then I play 2 copies of Odin, Father of the Aesir. Odin's effect is, once per turn, you can make him activate his effect so he's unaffected by your opponent's spells and trap cards until the end phase. And then during the end phase, if Odin is in the graveyard because it was sent there that turn, you can banish a Nordic Ascendant tuner monster in your graveyard, special summon it back to the field. And if you do, you get to draw 1 card. The Nordic monsters, god cards in this deck aren't exactly the greatest, but thanks to cards like Nordic Relics to Fallen, that their presence is actually useful. Although I do mostly summon Thor than Odin or Loki. But that is it for my Nordic God deck profile. If you have any ideas what I can do to improve the deck, or even just any ideas of decks I like to see me make, or decks you'd like to see face each other, feel free to comment those below. Thanks for watching.